William Carter quit his job on a cold, rainy afternoon. No farewell speech. No resignation letter. Just his employee badge left on the security desk. He went home early, cooked dinner for his daughter like he did every night, and pretended everything was fine. At midnight, the rain poured down violently. When the knock came at his door, William never imagined the person standing on his porch, soaked through in the storm, would be the most powerful CEO in the city. The house was small, a 2-bedroom rental where streetlights flickered and sidewalks cracked. William had chosen it deliberately after Sarah's funeral. 4 blocks from Irene's school. Close to everything that mattered when you were raising a 7-year-old daughter alone. Every morning followed the same rhythm. Wake at 5:30. Pack Irene's lunch. Braided her hair while she ate cereal and talked about science projects. Walk her to the bus stop. Wave until the yellow doors closed. Only then would William exhale. The commute took 45 minutes to Whitmore Technologies. He clocked in at exactly 8:25. Never early. Never late. William had been a software architect once. The kind of engineer others called when they were stuck. The kind who could see 3 moves ahead in any technical decision. He'd worked at places with stock options and catered lunches. He'd spoken at conferences. Published papers. Built systems used by millions. That was before Sarah died. Before custody arrangements and school pickup times became more important than late-night coding sessions. Before he learned that being a good father sometimes meant choosing the small life over the ambitious one. Sarah had been a developer too. They'd met at a hackathon, built something beautiful together, fallen in love over energy drinks and code. They'd started companies. Failed. Tried again. But they'd always had Irene. Until the car accident on a Tuesday morning that turned William's world into before and after. He took the position at Whitmore Technologies because it had normal hours. 9 to 5. No weekends. No on-call rotations. His colleagues whispered. Overqualified. Underachieving. They didn't know about the parent-teacher conferences, doctor's appointments, ballet recitals, nightmares that woke Irene screaming. They didn't know about his fear of losing her the way he'd lost Sarah. In the office, William kept his head down. He worked in a back corner cubicle, fixing bugs others found too boring. He ate lunch alone at his desk. Left exactly at 5 every day. His manager, Henry Lawson, treated him like furniture. Useful when needed. Invisible otherwise. Henry was the kind of manager who wore expensive watches and talked about disruption while building nothing. He'd risen through politics rather than competence. He had an office with a window. William had a wobbling desk. But William noticed things. He always had. It was his nature, the way his brain was wired, the way a system worked, the way data flowed through networks like water through pipes, the way people behaved when they thought no one was watching, the small inconsistencies that others dismissed as noise, but that William recognized as signals. 3 weeks ago, he noticed something wrong. A security flaw in the company's new authentication system. Not a small bug, not the kind of thing you could patch with a hotfix and forget about. A catastrophic vulnerability that could expose customer data for millions of users. Personal information, financial records, medical histories. The kind of breach that destroyed companies and ruined lives. William spent 2 days documenting it carefully, meticulously, the way Sarah had taught him. Screenshots with timestamps, code samples with line numbers, proof of concept demonstrations, impact assessments. He wrote it up in clear, simple language that anyone could understand, even executives who hadn't written code in 20 years. He sent it through the proper channels. Internal security team, compliance department, chain of command. He did everything right. Henry Lawson intercepted it within 4 hours. The meeting happened in a conference room on the 14th floor, one with frosted glass walls that turned people into shadows. Henry closed the door. No witnesses. William sat across the table with his laptop open, prepared to walk through the findings step by step. He'd brought printed copies. He'd rehearsed his explanations. Henry didn't look at the screen. He didn't touch the printouts. "You need to retract this report," Henry said. His voice was flat, emotionless. The tone of someone stating a fact rather than making a request. William blinked. "I'm sorry. The report. Delete it. We're not moving forward with this. This is a critical security flaw. If this system goes live as scheduled, we're looking at..." "I know what we're looking at." Henry leaned forward, his expensive watch catching the fluorescent light. "We're looking at a 6-month delay on our biggest product launch. We're looking at questions from the board about why this wasn't caught earlier in development. We're looking at my head on a chopping block because some low-level engineer decided to play hero." William felt his chest tighten. "This isn't about you. This is about protecting our users. If we launch with this vulnerability and someone exploits it, let me be clear." Henry's voice dropped lower, quieter, more dangerous. "You have a daughter, Irene Dush, right? 7 years old. You've got full custody since your wife passed away. That's a lot of responsibility for one parent. Expensive too. Medical bills, school fees, after-school programs. You wouldn't want to lose that stability. You wouldn't want a messy termination on your record when you're trying to find your next position. You wouldn't want questions about your judgment, your reliability, your ability to be a team player. Those kinds of questions can affect a lot of things. Background checks, reference calls, even custody arrangements, if someone thought you were making reckless decisions that put your employment at risk. You were not seeing a why. How tally. The threat hung in the air like smoke, like poison gas slowly filling the room. William understood immediately. Henry wasn't just asking him to stay quiet. He wasn't even ordering him. He was showing William exactly what would happen if he didn't comply. A bad reference that would follow him for years. A termination for cause that would make it impossible to find work at his level. Legal battles he couldn't afford. The kind of chaos that judges noticed when they reviewed custody arrangements. The kind of chaos that could take Irene away from him. That night, William lay awake in his narrow bed while Irene slept down the hall. Her door open the way she liked it, her nightlight casting stars across her ceiling. He stared at the water stain on his own ceiling that looked like a continent he'd never visit. He thought about doing the right thing. About going over Henry's head, straight to the CEO, straight to the board. About being the whistleblower. About standing up for what was correct even when it was hard. But then he thought about Irene waking up from a nightmare, and him not being there because he was fighting legal battles or looking for work in another city. He thought about her growing up in foster care, or with Sarah's parents who'd never approved of him, who'd argued for custody at the funeral while Sarah's body was still warm. He thought about choosing principles over presence and losing the only person he had left to love. He made his decision. The next morning, William deleted his copies of the report. He emptied his trash folder. He worked his regular hours. He said nothing. He showed up to meetings. He fixed the bugs Henry assigned him. He became invisible again. But he couldn't stay. Every day in that building felt like swallowing broken glass. Every time he saw Henry in the hallway, every time he heard someone talking about the upcoming product launch, every time he logged into the system that would go live with a vulnerability that could destroy lives, something inside William broke a little more. So 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon when the rain started early, William Carter walked out. He didn't make an announcement. He didn't send a goodbye email. He just placed his employee badge on the security desk, nodded at Marcus the guard who always asked about Irene, and left. He drove home in traffic that moved like cold honey. He made spaghetti with Irene, letting her stand on a stool to stir the sauce. He watched her do homework at the kitchen table. He read her a chapter of the book they were working through together. And he pretended his world wasn't falling apart. Alexandra Whitmore didn't sleep much. Running a technology company meant living in multiple time zones simultaneously. Investor calls at dawn. Strategy sessions past midnight. She was in her office at 11:30 when the email arrived. Flagged urgent by her head of security. Subject line: archived report. Requires immediate attention. Alexandra read it 3 times, her coffee going cold. The security vulnerability was catastrophic. The kind that triggered congressional hearings and class action lawsuits. It had been reported 3 weeks ago. Filed, reviewed, then deliberately buried. She scrolled to the name of the engineer who'd discovered it. William Carter. The name hit her like cold water. A memory rising from the grave. She knew that name. 8 years ago. Different company. Different crisis. Alexandra had been a vice president then, about to approve a merger that would have made her rich and destroyed the company. The numbers looked good. Everyone was celebrating. Except one engineer who'd requested a meeting. William Carter walked into her office with printouts and a gentle voice. He'd found hidden debt. Fabricated revenue. A house of cards built on fraud. He didn't work in finance. He'd just noticed patterns that didn't make sense. He'd dug deeper, because that was what he did. Alexandra killed the merger. Looked like a fool to the board. 6 months later, the target company collapsed in an FBI raid. Her reputation went from reckless to visionary overnight. She got promoted. William transferred to another division. She'd meant to thank him properly. But there were always more meetings, more crises. And William had faded into background noise. Until now. And now he'd tried to save her company again. Tried to stop another disaster. And instead of gratitude, instead of recognition, he'd gotten silence. Worse than silence. He'd gotten threats and fear, and a choice no one should have to make. Alexandra pulled his employment record, her fingers shaking slightly as she typed. Current status. Resigned. Effective immediately. No reason given. No forwarding information. Just gone. She felt something she rarely allowed herself to feel. Fear. Not fear of lawsuits, though those were coming. Not fear of bad press, though that was inevitable. Fear of losing someone who'd already saved her once. Fear that she'd failed someone who deserved better. Fear that she'd become the kind of person who let good people disappear. She grabbed her coat and car keys. Her assistant had gone home hours ago. The building was empty except for security and a few engineers who lived in their cubicles. Alexandra took the elevator down, walked past the night guard without explaining, and headed for the parking garage. Her assistant's voice echoed in her memory from earlier that day. Miss Whitmore, don't forget your 8 o'clock with the venture capital firm tomorrow. She'd cancel it. She'd cancel everything. This mattered more. The rain had turned into a downpour by the time Alexandra reached William's address. She'd pulled it from HR records, a home address in a neighborhood she'd never visited, a zip code that didn't show up in the company's demographic analyses. No driver tonight. No security detail. Just her in a sedan with wipers that couldn't keep up with the deluge, the windshield turning into a waterfall. His neighborhood was nothing like hers. Small houses crammed close together. Chain-link fences, rusting in the weather. Toys left in wet grass where children had abandoned them. Cars parked on lawns because driveways were full. This was where people lived when they worked hard and still couldn't get ahead. When they made sacrifices invisible to everyone else. She parked on the street and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, watching rain hammer the hood of her car. What was she doing? She was the CEO of a major technology company. She had lawyers for situations like this. Art departments, proper channels, protocols. She could send someone tomorrow during business hours. She could handle this through official means. But this wasn't about process. This was personal. Alexandra stepped out into the rain. No umbrella. She hadn't thought to grab one. She walked up the cracked driveway, stepping over a puddle that looked deep enough to swallow her shoe. She climbed the 3 wooden steps to a porch with peeling paint and a doormat that said welcome in faded letters. Through the window, she could see warm light. Shadows moving inside. A life happening in miniature. A father and daughter world that existed completely separate from boardrooms and stock prices. She knocked. 3 times. Firm but not aggressive. The kind of knock that said this matters, but I'm not the police. Footsteps. The door opened. William stood there in sweatpants and an old college shirt with a logo she didn't recognize. His hair was damp from a recent shower. His feet were bare. His expression went from confused to shocked in half a second, his brain catching up to what his eyes were seeing. "Ms. Whitmore, I need to talk to you." Behind him, a small voice called out from down the hallway. "Dad?" "Who is it?" A little girl appeared beside him, ducking under his arm to peer out at the stranger. Dark hair and a messy ponytail. Big eyes that took in Alexandra's expensive coat, her heels, the rain dripping from her hair. This was Irene. The daughter William had chosen over everything else. The reason he'd stayed silent when speaking up would have been easier. The person who mattered more than principles or pride or doing the right thing in a world that punished righteousness. "It's okay, sweetheart," William said softly, his hand on Irene's shoulder. "Go back to bed. I'll be there in a minute." Irene studied Alexandra with the unfiltered curiosity of children who hadn't yet learned to hide what they were thinking. Then she nodded slowly and disappeared down the hallway, her footsteps fading. William stepped outside and closed the door behind him carefully, quietly, protecting his daughter from whatever this was. They stood on the porch together, rain drumming on the roof above them. The sound almost deafening. "What are you doing here?" His voice was quiet, but firm. Not hostile. "Just tired." King. The exhaustion of someone who'd run out of hope but was still going through the motions. "I found your report." William's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "Then you know why I left. I know what Henry did. I know he threatened you. I know he buried evidence that could save this company from a catastrophe that would destroy lives." Alexandra's hair was plastered to her face. Rain ran down her neck, soaking into her collar. She didn't care. "And I know that 8 years ago you saved me from making the worst decision of my career. You walked into my office and showed me the truth when no one else would. You've never asked for credit. You've never asked for anything. And I let you disappear. Twice." William looked at her for a long moment, rain falling between them like a curtain. "What do you want from me?" "I want the truth. All of it. Not as your CEO. As someone who owes you more than you know." "No." They sat in his living room on furniture that had come from thrift stores and curb alerts. William made tea he didn't drink, just to give his hands something to do. Alexandra sat on a worn couch that sagged in the middle, springs poking through fabric that had once been blue. The house was clean but sparse. Drawings on the refrigerator held up with alphabet magnets. Library books stacked on the coffee table, due dates weeks away. A child's backpack by the door, pink with unicorns. A life built on small moments and careful budgets. William told her everything. The security flaw he'd discovered while reviewing code no one else wanted to touch. The documentation process, the screenshots, the careful proof that should have mattered. The meeting with Henry in the conference room with frosted glass. The threat disguised as concern. The impossible choice between protecting millions of strangers or protecting the one person he loved most in the world. Alexandra listened without interrupting. She sat perfectly still, her coat dripping on his floor, her hands folded in her lap. When he finished, she spoke quietly, her voice raw with something that might have been shame. "The company exists because of a decision you helped me make 8 years ago. We built everything on that foundation. The integrity, the trust, the values we claim to have. And I never thanked you. I got promoted and you got transferred, and I let you disappear like you didn't matter. I let you become invisible." "I chose to be invisible," William said. He was sitting in an armchair that didn't match the couch, his hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold. "After Sarah died, I needed invisible. I needed boring. I needed a job that ended at 5 o'clock, so I could be home for Irene. I needed small and safe and forgettable, because that's what keeps her world stable. You shouldn't have had to choose between being a good father and being treated with respect." William smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of someone who'd heard noble words before, and learned they meant nothing. "That's how the world works, Ms. Whitmore. People like me don't get both. It's not how my world works. Not anymore." Down the hallway, a door creaked open. Irene appeared again, this time fully awake, wearing pajamas with stars on them. She walked into the living room barefoot and climbed onto the couch next to William, settling against his side like a bird finding its nest. She looked at Alexandra with those big, serious eyes. "Are you my dad's boss?" Alexandra paused, chose her words carefully. "I was." "Did he get in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. He didn't do anything wrong." Irene processed this with the gravity children brought to adult mysteries. Then she asked the question that changed everything. The question that cut through years of corporate politics and careful compromise and resignation. Did he used to dream about being important? The room went silent. William's face crumbled slightly, the mask slipping for just a second. He put his arm around his daughter but didn't answer because he couldn't, because the answer was yes, and saying it out loud would break something. Alexandra felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept carefully protected for years. She looked at this little girl who'd just articulated what William would never admit. That he'd buried his ambitions so deep, he'd almost forgotten they existed. That he'd traded brilliance for stability and told himself it didn't hurt. That he dreamed sometimes of being more than invisible, but woke up and packed lunches and pretended the dreams didn't matter. "Your dad is important," Alexandra said. Her voice shook slightly. "He's one of the most important people I know. He's saved me twice. He saved people he'll never meet. And he did it while being the best father you could ever have." Irene nodded seriously, accepting this truth the way children accepted gravity. Then she hugged William and went back to bed, leaving the adults sitting in the wreckage of everything unsaid. "I can't come back," William said finally. "I don't trust systems anymore. I don't trust people with power. I don't trust that doing the right thing won't destroy my life." "Then don't trust the system. Trust me. Let me fix this. Let me prove that someone in power can be worth trusting." The emergency board meeting happened at 7 in the morning. Alexandra demanded it. Called every board member personally. Made it clear this wasn't optional. Full attendance. No exceptions. No excuses. The conference room on the 42nd floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city as it woke up. 15 executives in expensive suits sat around a marble table that cost more than William made in a year. Henry Lawson sat 3 seats from the head of the table, confident and composed, his expensive watch gleaming, his tie perfectly knotted. He thought he knew how this would go. He'd been in rooms like this before. He knew how to survive. Alexandra stood at the front with a presentation remote in her hand and a look on her face that made the temperature drop. 3 weeks ago, one of our engineers discovered a catastrophic security vulnerability in our flagship authentication system. A vulnerability that would expose personal data for over 8 million users. Financial information, medical records, private communications. He filed a comprehensive report through proper channels. That report was intercepted and buried by someone in this room. Henry shifted in his chair but didn't speak. Around the table, executives glanced at each other, trying to figure out who was in trouble, how this affected them, whether they needed to start protecting themselves. Alexandra clicked to the next slide. William's original report. Code samples highlighted in red. Impact assessments with numbers that made people gasp. Proof that would have prevented a disaster that could have destroyed the company. The engineer who filed this report quit yesterday. He quit because he was threatened. Because protecting his daughter mattered more than fighting a system designed to silence him. Because doing the right thing in this company has consequences. She looked directly at Henry. Held his gaze. "Want to explain why you killed this report?" Henry's mask slipped for just a second. Then he recovered. Straightened his tie. Put on the face of a man who'd weathered storms before. "We were 72 hours from launch. Delaying would have cost us millions in revenue. Disappointed investors. Set us back against competitors. I made a judgment call to assess post-launch patching options." "Yeah, I'm sorry." "You made a judgment call to hide a security flaw that could have destroyed lives because you were afraid of looking bad. I was protecting shareholder value. You were protecting yourself." Alexandra clicked to another slide. Security projections. Don't you? Expert analysis she'd commissioned overnight. Charts that showed exactly what would happen when, not if, when, the vulnerability was exploited. Class action lawsuits in the billions. Federal investigations. Criminal charges for negligent data handling. Stock price collapse. Company dissolution. You gambled with people's data because you were afraid of looking incompetent. And when someone tried to stop you, you threatened his custody of his daughter. The room erupted. Board members turned on Henry. Questions came fast, angry, overlapping. Did you really threaten custody? Do you understand the legal liability? How could you be this reckless? What else have you been hiding? Henry stood, his chair scraping loud against polished floor. This is one engineer's word against mine. Where's your proof? Where's the documentation of this supposed threat? The conference room door opened. William walked in. He'd put on a suit that Alexandra recognized from 8 years ago, slightly out of fashion now, but still dignified. He carried a folder. His hands didn't shake. He looked calm in the way people looked calm when they'd already accepted the worst outcome. Alexandra nodded at him. William placed the folder on the marble table. Opened it. Pulled out transcripts, time-stamped and notarized. Recordings. Emails. Documentation of everything Henry said and did. I may have deleted my copies of the security report when ordered to, but I kept everything else. Every threat. Every veiled warning. Every time he mentioned my daughter's name. I documented it all because I've learned that powerful people don't face consequences unless you have proof they can't deny. Henry's face went white. Actually white, the color draining like water from a broken glass. You recorded a private conversation? That's illegal. That's inadmissible. I documented a threat made against my child in a state where single-party consent recording is legal. Turns out that's admissible when you're protecting yourself from coercion. I checked with 3 different lawyers before I quit. I wanted to be absolutely sure. The room exploded again. Board members shouting over each other. Legal teams scrambling to assess damage. Henry tried to argue, tried to spin it, tried to use the political skills that had gotten him this far. But it was over. Everyone in the room could see it. Security escorted him out within the hour, his expensive watch catching light one last time as he walked past the windows. The board voted unanimously to delay the launch, to fix the security flaw, to do the work they should have done when William first reported it. Alexandra publicly apologized to William in front of everyone. But she wasn't done. There's one more thing you need to know about William Carter, Alexandra said. The room had quieted. People were checking phones, processing implications, calculating how this affected them. She made them look up. 10 years ago, he co-founded the algorithm that powers our entire authentication system. The original patents are registered under Sarah Carter, his late wife. They built it together in their apartment while working full-time jobs and raising a baby. The company acquired it as part of a technology bundle 6 years ago. We've been profiting from his work for half a decade. And he never asked for recognition. Never asked for compensation beyond the initial acquisition. Never asked for anything. The room went silent. Every executive stared at William. The quiet engineer who fixed bugs in the back corner of the building. The invisible man who left at 5 o'clock. The low-level employee they'd dismissed as mediocre. The co-founder they never knew existed. One board member, a woman with silver hair and a reputation for asking questions no one wanted to answer, spoke up. Why didn't you say anything? William's answer was simple, direct. The kind of truth that hit harder than any prepared speech. After Sarah died, I didn't want credit. I wanted to raise my daughter. I wanted to be there when she woke up from nightmares. I wanted to pack her lunches and braid her hair and read her bedtime stories. Everything else was noise. Money was noise. Recognition was noise. The only thing that mattered was being her father. Alexandra looked at him across the marble table, across the gap between their worlds. You deserve more than noise, William. You deserve better than what we gave you. Nisisui. William stood in his kitchen 3 days later, staring at an offer letter, printed on heavy cream paper with the company logo embossed at the top. Chief Technology Officer Doorstep. Salary with 7 figures. Stock options that vested over 4 years. Benefits that included things he'd never imagined needing. The respect he'd walked away from years ago, offered back like it had never been taken. Irene sat at the kitchen table doing homework, her tongue sticking out slightly the way it always did when she concentrated. She looked up, noticed him staring at the paper. "What's that? A job offer? The one from the lady who came in the rain?" William smiled despite himself. "Yes, are you going to take it?" He didn't answer right away. He was afraid. Afraid of the hours even with promises of flexibility. Afraid of the pressure that came with titles like that. Afraid of becoming the kind of father who missed recitals because of meetings and forgot birthdays because of deadlines. Afraid of losing Irene to ambition the way he'd almost lost everything to silence. Afraid that wanting more made him selfish. Afraid that he'd worked so hard to be small and safe that he'd forgotten how to be anything else. Irene put down her pencil. Looked at him with those eyes that saw through everything. "Dad? Yeah, sweetheart, you're allowed to be proud of yourself." The simplicity of it hit him like a physical force. His 7-year-old daughter, giving him permission to want something more than survival. Telling him that ambition and love didn't have to be enemies. That he could be important and still be hers. What if I mess it up? What if I take this job and I'm not good at it anymore? What if I've been invisible for so long that I forgot how to be seen? Then you'll fix it. That's what you do. You fix things. She said it like it was obvious, like the answer had been there all along, and he just needed to look. William called Alexandra that night, after Irene was asleep. The house quiet except for the refrigerator humming, and the neighbor's dog barking at shadows. "I'll take the position, but I need conditions. Name them." No hesitation. Just readiness. "I leave at 5:30 twice a week for Irene's activities. Ballet on Wednesdays. Science club on Fridays. I'm unreachable on weekends unless there's an actual emergency. And I get to define what emergency means. A server going down is not an emergency. A security breach is an emergency. Understand the difference?" There was a pause. Then Alexandra's voice came through warm and certain and real. "Done. Anything else? I want to rebuild the team. Hire people who were overlooked. People who are brilliant, but got buried because they didn't fit someone's idea of what genius looks like. Done. And I want you to fire any manager who confuses hours with productivity. If someone's working 70 hours a week, they're either bad at their job or being exploited. Either way, the manager failed." Alexandra laughed. Actually laughed. "I'll put it in writing." The transition happened slowly, carefully, like rebuilding a house that had burned down. William started working normal hours as CTO. Then, slightly longer ones by choice, not requirement. He hired people he trusted. People like him who'd been invisible. Single parents. Caregivers. People with sick family members or disabilities or any of the 1,000 reasons someone might need flexibility. He built systems that didn't require heroics. Processes that were sustainable. A culture where going home on time was celebrated rather than punished. He showed Irene that ambition and presence weren't mutually exclusive. That you could be important and still read bedtime stories. That success didn't mean abandoning the people you loved. Alexandra showed up differently too. She started attending Irene's ballet recitals. Not as the CEO, not as a publicity stunt, just as someone who cared. She sat in the back row with William and watched a 7-year-old dance with fierce concentration. She learned Irene's favorite ice cream flavor, mint chocolate chip, even though it turned her tongue green. She listened to stories about school projects and friendship drama and the injustice of bedtimes. She stopped performing power and started practicing humanity. William noticed. How could he not? The way Alexandra's shoulders relaxed around Irene. The way she asked questions and actually listened to the answers instead of waiting for her turn to talk. The way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention, like he was someone worth seeing. One night, after a company dinner, where Irene had charmed half the board with her stories about volcanoes, Alexandra walked them to their car. It was summer now. Warm evening air. Irene ran ahead, chasing fireflies in the parking lot, her laughter floating back to them. She's remarkable, Alexandra said. She is. You did that, alone. While the world underestimated you and treated you like you didn't matter. William looked at her. Really looked at her. Not as the CEO, but as the person who'd driven through a storm to find him. You're the first person who's ever seen it. The first person who saw me. I see you, William. I always have. From the first time you walked into my office 8 years ago with proof I didn't want to hear. I was just too much of a coward to say it. Too afraid of what it would mean. The kiss happened 3 months later. Nothing dramatic. No grand gesture. Just Alexandra, helping William carry groceries into his house. Because his arms were full, and hers weren't. Their hands touching on the same bag. The moment stretching into something neither of them had planned, but both wanted. Something that felt inevitable and surprising all at once. Irene walked in from her room, saw them kissing in the kitchen surrounded by paper bags and produce, and said, finally, before going back to whatever she'd been doing. They laughed until they cried, holding each other in the kitchen that smelled like coffee and possibility. Henry Lawson faced federal charges for data manipulation and corporate fraud. The trial made headlines. Business journalists writing think pieces about corporate ethics. Former colleagues testifying about patterns of behavior they'd ignored. William didn't attend. He was too busy building the security system that would define the industry for the next decade. Too busy being a father. Too busy living a life that mattered. The wedding happened on a rainy Saturday in April. Small ceremony. Just close friends and colleagues. Irene stood between William and Alexandra as they exchanged vows on a porch that no longer had peeling paint. The house had been renovated. New siding. Fixed steps. But William had refused to move. This was where his life had changed. Where a CEO had knocked in a storm. Where silence had become courage. Where invisibility had become presence. As rain drummed on the roof, William looked at Alexandra and saw the person who'd driven through a storm to find him. Who'd looked past titles and politics to see who he really was. He looked at Irene and saw the daughter who'd given him permission to want more. Who'd taught him that being small wasn't the same as being safe. He looked at himself in the mirror that morning and finally saw what they'd seen all along. A man who'd protected what mattered most. Not by shouting. Not by fighting. But by making the hardest choice and trusting that eventually, if you were worth finding, someone would knock. Someone had knocked. And when that door opened, everything changed.